Now to an incredible find overseas, an elaborate series of stone monuments believed to have been hidden for thousands of years, not far from the famous site of Stonehenge.
Now, a new analysis shows that the 6-ton iconic altar stone at the heart of Stonehenge originated from northeastern Scotland.
For 5,000 years, Stonehenge stood in silence and let people argue about it. Priests said it was a temple. Astronomers said it was a calendar. Archaeologists said it was a burial ground. Romantics said it was a place of ritual and mystery. Every generation walked the same stones, measured the same shadows, and came away with a different theory and the same unresolved feeling that something fundamental was being missed. In 2026, a research team stopped arguing and tried something different. They handed the entire monument to an artificial intelligence. 3 centuries of accumulated data, every geological survey, every astronomical measurement, every acoustic test, every geophysical scan ever conducted at the site, all of it fed into a single system with one instruction: find what human researchers, working one fragment at a time, have been consistently overlooking. What came back was not a confirmation of any existing theory. It was something that reframes the entire monument and raises a question nobody working at the site had ever thought to ask directly. We are going through this finding piece by piece. Stay with it until the end, because the last discovery is the one that should make you uncomfortable. Section 1. The monument that should not exist. Start with the basic problem, because it is stranger than most accounts acknowledge. Stonehenge sits on the chalk plain of Salisbury in southern England, roughly 90 miles southwest of London. It occupies flat agricultural land in a way that has unsettled people for as long as people have been writing things down, not because the stones are simply impressive, because they do not belong to the world around them in any way that makes intuitive sense. Look at what the builders actually accomplished. The outer ring is made from sarsen, a dense, extraordinarily hard silica-cemented sandstone. Individual upright blocks stand over 6 meters tall and weigh close to 25 tons each. They were transported from Marlborough Downs, approximately 25 miles to the north, by people who, under the standard account, had no metal tools, no wheeled carts capable of bearing that load, and no written plans to coordinate the work. On top of these uprights sit horizontal lintels, each one weighing several tons, shaped to curve with the circle and locked into place using mortise and tenon joints, the same joinery technique a skilled carpenter cuts into hardwood furniture. Here it was cut into solid rock by hand with tools made of stone and bone. Inside that outer ring stand the bluestones, smaller, still weighing up to 4 tons each. They came from the Prehistory Hills of Wales, 140 miles away. Across rivers, hills, and open water, no road, no vehicle, no iron, moved by muscle, rope, and presumably whatever could be floated across water crossings. Modern construction teams equipped with hydraulic cranes and precision steel rigging describe moving a single 25-ton block as a serious logistical challenge, the standard explanation for how these stones traveled: log rollers. Earthen ramps, organized teams of laborers across generations, has always worked on the surface, while quietly struggling under its own weight when pressed for specifics. But the AI did not start where everyone else starts. It did not go to the stones first. It went to the holes, and that decision turned out to be the first signal that what it was about to find had been invisible, precisely because no one had thought to look there. Section 2. The 56 holes. The Aubrey holes are 56 pits arranged in a ring just inside the outer earthwork. At Stonehenge, they were first identified in the 17th century and named after the antiquarian John Aubrey, who noticed them in the grass. For the 3 centuries that followed, they were treated as largely incidental. A few contained cremated human remains. Most were empty. The irregular spacing between them was written off as the kind of imprecision you would expect from people working with antler picks in the dark. No pattern was seriously proposed. No one ran the numbers at scale. It was background detail in a monument full of more visually dramatic features. The AI measured the spacing between all 56 holes to fractions of a millimeter. Then it plotted the distance between every consecutive pair around the full circle. Then it compared the resulting curve against known mathematical functions. The random scatter that everyone had assumed was there did not exist. The spacing between the holes traces a clean, repeating sinusoidal wave, and the wave matches, with statistical accuracy that the team's lead astronomer described as overwhelming. The equation that describes how the moon's orbital path shifts across the 18.6-year lunar nodal cycle. The maximum and minimum declination points of the moon across that entire period are encoded in the physical gaps between the pits. accurate to centimeters, laid into the ground on a circle 100 meters wide. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the astronomer brought in to verify the finding independently, ran the numbers twice before she commented. Her assessment: the correlation between the Aubrey hole spacing and lunar orbital mechanics is statistically overwhelming, and the probability of it occurring by chance is effectively zero. Sit with that for a moment before moving on. This is not a rough alignment you could stumble onto by watching the horizon for a few years. Tracking the lunar nodal cycle requires continuous observation across nearly 2 decades, holding every previous measurement against a sky that shifts slightly each night. Accurate enough to notice a drift that most casual observers would never detect. That work had to begin at least 1 generation before the first pit was cut. Someone had to watch, record, and pass the numbers down before a single shovel broke ground. And the question the AI answered that no one had answered before: why 56 holes specifically? Because 56 is 3 times the lunar nodal cycle. 18.6 multiplied by 3 equals 55.8, rounded to the nearest whole number, 56. The ring is a triple-cycle lunar calculator, a device for tracking the moon across 3 complete nodal periods, 56 years of sky held in the Earth. Here is what we want you to think about before the next section. If a ring of pits that everyone dismissed for 300 years turns out to be a precision instrument for tracking lunar orbital mechanics, what else at this site has been sitting in plain sight while everyone looked past it? Section 3: the sound machine. When the AI turned from the holes to the standing stones, it did something no prior analysis had attempted at full scale. It took every documented measurement of the Sarsen ring positions: heights, angles, stone density, the precise curvature of the circle, the exact seating geometry of every lintel, and ran complete acoustic simulations of the completed monument. The result was not expected by anyone on the team. Stonehenge functions as a resonant cavity. The geometry of the stone ring forces standing waves at specific frequencies. The strongest of those frequencies fall in the infrasound range between roughly 95 and 120 Hz, and that frequency band sits below the threshold of conscious hearing. Stand inside the monument while sound fills it, and your ears register nothing unusual, but your body registers something else entirely. Research in psychoacoustics has established that sustained infrasound in this frequency range can produce altered states of consciousness, intense emotional shifts, visual disturbances, measurable changes in heart rate, and neural activity associated with trance states. The geometry of Stonehenge, when sound is generated inside the ring, produces precisely those frequencies repeatedly, consistently from any sound source placed within the circle. Dr. Marcus Chin, the acoustic engineer who verified the simulation, ran it independently, expecting to find the calculation error that would explain the result away. He did not find one. His conclusion was direct. Achieving this kind of tuned acoustic effect with arranged stone requires a level of design precision that today acoustic engineers reach using heavy computational modeling. Stonehenge reaches it with geometry alone. The detail that removes any remaining possibility of coincidence is this: the effect is not a quirk of one particular configuration or one particular day. The geometry produces the same frequency band every time, from any sound source, with the strongest resonance concentrated at fixed points on the interior floor. Accidental acoustics produce unpredictable results. This produces the same result every time. That is a design specification, not a lucky accident. Now here is the piece that changes how every burial at this site should be interpreted. The AI identified the exact coordinates inside the circle where the infrasound effect reaches peak intensity, the acoustic hotspots where the resonance would have the strongest effect on a human body. Then it cross-referenced those coordinates against the archaeological record of where cremated human remains were found at the site. They do not appear at random. They cluster on the precise points the acoustic simulation flagged as most intense. The standard interpretation of those burials has always been that these were honored individuals laid to rest in a sacred place. The AI's map suggests the relationship between the burial locations and the acoustic structure is not symbolic. It is exact. Those individuals were placed on the coordinates where the monument exerted its greatest measurable effect on a living body, whether those people died there in the course of a ceremony, or after extended exposure to something they experienced but could not explain. The data does not say, but it is specific about one thing. This was not a quiet monument. It was a working instrument built to operate on human consciousness directly, and someone knew where inside it the effect was strongest. Section 4: the singing stones. This brings us back to the question that has puzzled researchers for decades: why those particular stones from that particular corner of Wales? The journey is 140 miles. There is sarsen stone available far closer to Salisbury. The blue stones are smaller than the sarsens and do not carry the visual weight of the outer ring. The effort of transporting them over hills, rivers, and open water by hand is enormous. Every practical argument points to using local material, and yet the builders traveled 140 miles and brought back these specific stones. The eye ran petrographic analysis on every bluestone. What it found is not about geology. It is about sound. Strike a bluestone and it rings. Each stone produces a clear, sustained tone determined by its size, shape, and mineral composition. Different stones produce different pitches. That alone is interesting but not conclusive. What made the finding significant is the pattern across all the bluestones together. The stones were not selected randomly from the Welsh quarries. The AI found that the pitches they produce, taken as a set, form a harmonic series tones locked together by precise mathematical intervals that correspond to a pentatonic scale, a five-note structure found independently in musical traditions across ancient cultures on every inhabited continent. Cultures with no contact with each other arrived at the same five-note framework. The Stonehenge bluestones were selected to produce exactly that structure. Someone walked into the Presley Hills, struck individual slabs, listened to the pitch each one produced, and kept only the ones that fit the harmonic design the monument required. Then transported those exact stones 140 miles. That is not quarrying, that is auditions, and placement inside the monument was equally deliberate. Each bluestone sits at a specific acoustic node relative to the sarsen ring. When the outer ring generates its low-frequency standing waves, the bluestones at those nodes vibrate in sympathy. The sarsen ring produces the fundamental resonance. The bluestones layer harmonics on top. Together they build a tuned acoustic environment that works at two levels simultaneously: the infrasound that the body registers below conscious awareness, and the harmonic tones the ear hears directly. To anyone standing inside while the monument was active, the stones would not have seemed inert. They would have seemed alive, and the implication is significant. The acoustic design, the bluestone selection, the sarsen geometry, the astronomical alignments, these are not separate decisions made at separate times. They are a single integrated system. You cannot design the acoustic properties of the sarsen ring without already knowing where the bluestones will sit. You cannot select bluestones for their harmonic series without already knowing what fundamental frequency the outer ring will produce. The whole thing was designed as one instrument before the first stone moved. That means someone before construction began already knew how stone carries sound, how specific geometries generate specific frequencies, and how those frequencies interact with human neurophysiology. A complete technical knowledge base, applied from the beginning. Where that knowledge came from is the question the simple story has never been able to answer. And the AI found something that makes the question considerably harder. Section 5, the plan that came first. When the AI widened its view to the surrounding landscape, the frame of the entire project shifted. LiDAR surveys, geophysical mapping, and 3 centuries of archaeological records covering several square miles around Stonehenge were fed into the system together. What the AI found is that Stonehenge is not a monument. It is the centerpiece of a coordinated network that covers the entire landscape. Hundreds of earthwork enclosures, burial mounds, ceremonial avenues, timber circles, and pit alignments spread across the Salisbury plain around the monument. Viewed individually and in isolation, as most of them have been studied, they appear unrelated products of different periods and purposes. The AI measured the geometric and astronomical relationships between all of them simultaneously. From ground level, the landscape looks like scattered remnants of different eras, from the perspective of the AI measuring relationships across kilometers. It is a single coordinated figure drawn at a scale no person standing on the earth could have perceived while drawing it. Some burial mounds form precise geometric triangles with Stonehenge at a vertex. Earthworks run straight across kilometers. Timber circles, when sighted from the main monument, mark specific astronomical events. The alignment precision the AI calculated across the entire network, placing structures kilometers apart and maintaining geometric accuracy to within a few meters, corresponds to surveying capability more typically associated with classical Greek engineering. Roughly 2,500 years after Stonehenge, the Neolithic builders had it anyway. Dr. Sarah Bradford, a landscape archaeologist whose career focuses on large-scale spatial patterns. described seeing the AI's overlay for the first time as the moment when the design became obvious in a way that made clear why it had been invisible to everyone studying individual sites in isolation. Seen as a connected system, she noted, the design principles challenged nearly everything accepted about Neolithic technical capability, but the finding that genuinely bends the timeline is this. Some of the earthworks that belong to this coordinated geometric network were built between 3500 and 3000 BCE, between 500 and 1000 years before the Sarsen circle went up. The landscape blueprint existed first. Stonehenge was set into a geometric plan that was already in the ground before its most recognizable stones were raised. Someone conceived the master design around 3500 BC and began committing it to the earth. Their descendants across 20 to 25 generations kept executing that design, accurately enough to maintain geometric precision across half a millennium, with no writing system capable of carrying the technical specifications forward. The AI checked the stability of the knowledge transmission against everything documented about oral tradition. Even the most stable oral traditions on record, Vedic hymns, Homeric epics, show measurable drift across centuries. What this landscape requires is a transmission more precise and more stable than anything in the human record. Technical knowledge held exact and usable across 500 years, passed from person to person, generation to generation, without losing the tolerances the design demanded. Whoever first drew this plan never lived to see it completed. They began something that would outlast them by centuries, and trusted the people who came after them to carry it forward faithfully. And for a very long time, those people did. Section 6: Knowledge slipping away. When the AI stopped looking at the design and started looking at the sequence in which the stones were actually shaped and placed, the picture became uncomfortable, because what the radiocarbon dates, architectural relationships, and stratigraphic records show, when all of them are aligned simultaneously for the first time, is that the builders were not a tradition at its peak. They were a tradition that was already coming apart while they were still building. The AI tracked every measurable indicator of technical precision across the construction sequence and found a consistent directional pattern. The earliest arrangements show the deepest command of the acoustic and astronomical design. The first bluestone layouts achieve the strongest harmonic resonance. The first Sarsen trilithons hit the tightest tolerances. And then, as construction continued across subsequent phases, the precision loosens. Later stones land in positions that weaken the acoustic effect. Later alignments drift from the calculated ideal. The contact surfaces on early stones show curvature variation under 2 millimeters across 50 centimeter, spans tolerances more typical of precision metalwork than of stone shaped with stone tools. Experimental archaeology teams attempting to reproduce that precision have spent months and arrived at rough approximations. The later stones at the same site miss the acoustically ideal position by an average of nearly 13 centimeters, compared to an average of 3.2 centimeters for the earliest work. That gap is not sloppier execution. It is the difference between someone who understands precisely why a stone must go in a specific location, and someone who has inherited the instruction that a stone should go roughly there, without the underlying knowledge that made the instruction meaningful. The first is knowledge. The second is a copy of knowledge that has lost its source. The AI found the same signature in the tool marks. Different working techniques appear on the same stones, separated by what weathering indicates are decades or centuries. Blocks partially shaped, then set aside, then returned to and finished by hands that clearly could not match the first approach. One stone, two workers separated by generations, and the gap between them is visible in the rock. Technical traditions normally work the other way. Each generation learns from the last and improves on it. Stonehenge runs in the opposite direction. It peaks at the beginning and declines from there. The knowledge was moving one way, time was moving the other. Does that pattern sound familiar? Think about it. Has anyone ever handed you a complex process or a set of instructions and told you that the person who first designed it understood things that nobody since has been able to fully recover? That you are working from a copy of something that was once complete? That is exactly what the stones record, and it raises a question the AI cannot answer. Where did the original knowledge come from before the people who built Stonehenge already in decline? Section 7. The final transmission. The last thing that happened at Stonehenge was not abandonment. Around 1600 BCE, all activity at the site ended. No more construction, no more modifications, silence. But the AI's analysis of the final phase of activity shows that the people who sealed the site were not leaving carelessly. Fallen stones were laid down with deliberate care. Specific areas were covered with packed earth in a way that protected buried features from weathering and erosion. The closure was orderly, methodical, intentional. The AI's reading of the entire sequence, the lunar calculator in the holes, the acoustic chamber in the stones, the tuned harmonic series of the bluestones, the coordinated landscape geometry, the 9 confirmed astronomical alignments with an average angular error under 0.3 degrees, and the slow, measurable decline in precision across the construction phases converges on a single interpretive frame. Everything at Stonehenge encodes cycles, lunar cycles in the pit spacing, solar cycles in the stone orientations, resonant acoustic cycles in the geometry, and astronomical cycles so long tracking the precession of the equinoxes, which completes one full rotation across roughly 26,000 years that no individual human lifetime and no single generation could witness the beginning and end of one. You do not build a machine that tracks cycles spanning thousands of years in order to know when to plant crops. You build it to catch something that comes around rarely, matters enormously, and would be catastrophic to miss. The AI can confirm they were tracking it. It cannot determine what it was. What it can determine is the character of what happened at the end. The final phase looks like people who understood that they could no longer maintain the instrument, that the knowledge required to run it had thinned past the point of recovery, but who wanted the physical structure to survive intact for whoever came later with sharper tools and a longer memory. They packed it carefully, sealed it against time, and walked away trusting strangers they would never meet to eventually read what they had left. That trust sat in the ground for 3,600 years. And in 2026, an AI system fed with every measurement this site has ever produced began reading the message back. Here is where we have arrived. A ring of 56 pits that everyone dismissed for 300 years encodes lunar orbital mechanics accurate to centimeters. The geometry of the Sarsen ring generates infrasound at frequencies that measurably alter human consciousness. Bluestones were individually selected from 140 miles away for their acoustic pitch and placed at precise harmonic nodes inside the outer ring. The surrounding landscape, across several square miles, follows a single coordinated geometric design that was committed to the Earth 500 years before the main monument was built. 9 astronomical alignments are confirmed, with an average error under 1/3 of a degree. And the precision of the work peaks at the beginning and declines from there, the signature of a tradition transmitting knowledge it no longer fully understands. What the AI found at Stonehenge does not look like the beginning of human astronomical and acoustic knowledge. It looks like the end of it, a final transmission from people who could feel what they knew slipping away, who could not stop it but could carve the structure of it into the most permanent medium available and trust the future to eventually be capable of reading it back. We are that future. And for the first time, we have a system patient and comprehensive enough to take that reading seriously. The question the AI opened and cannot close is where the original knowledge came from before these builders already had it in decline. What earlier civilization, what longer tradition, what chain of understanding stretching further back than Stonehenge produced the blueprint that this site was built to execute? That question now has enough precise data attached to it that it can be asked scientifically for the first time. And Stonehenge is not the only place where this fingerprint is appearing. Precision at the beginning, decline from there, knowledge preserved in stone by people who could feel it leaving, the same pattern, other sites, other stones, other holes that nobody ran the full numbers on until now. Tell us in the comments, which ancient site do you think should go into the system next? The ones that generate the most discussion are the ones we take on next. That is not a figure of speech. We actually track what you send us, and if you stayed with this one all the way through, make sure you do not miss the next one.